Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Last First Date Radio, featuring interviews with experts in dating, relating, and mating in midlife. And now, here's your host, Sandy Weiner.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. This is Sandy, and I am a dating and love coach at lastfirstdate.com. Welcome to Last First Date Radio. We are a featured show about attracting and sustaining healthy relationships in midlife. Every week I bring you in-depth interviews with top experts and cutting-edge authors in the field of dating and relationships. And today I'm going to be speaking with author Chuck Epstein about his adventures in dating after 50. He had been widowed and jumped into the dating scene, and he wrote a book about it, and it's going to be a very interesting show. So I'm looking forward to talking to Chuck today. And as a dating coach, I really focus my attention on helping women become beautiful from the inside out. I am all about helping people value themselves and set clear boundaries and learn how to communicate more effectively, because when you can do all those things, you end up having the best relationships of your life. And the thing that's really cool about dating at this age, after 40, 50, 60, is that you really are hopefully more mature and you know what you want, and you're really dating for you, not to build a family anymore, to start out and have children together, but to really grow old together and go on adventures and have an incredible friendship. So this is all so wonderful, and that's why you're in the very best place. And so I have helped thousands of women own their value, and I would love to share a tip with you. I share a tip every week on how to be a woman of value, and today's tip is learn to receive graciously. I find that women in general are not so good at receiving. They're really been trained to give, and to give sometimes to depletion. And so, especially in dating, when a man offers to pay for your meal, or pull your chair out for you, or open the door, or hold your bags, please stop saying, "I got this," or pushing him away. Let him feel like a guy and receive, because receiving is also a gift. And so if you keep saying, "I got this, I'm independent, I don't need anybody," you will end up alone, and that's not what you want, especially if you're listening to this show and you're looking to improve your relationships. So two things. I do have a free guide, so if you haven't grabbed it yet, go to my website when you're done listening today, lastfirstdate.com, and sign up for my free guide, which is the top 10 reasons why men pull away or disappear. This is a question I get asked all the time. Why do men ghost? In fact, today there's a new video posted on my Facebook that talks about ghosting. So you can also go find me on Facebook at Last First Date, and you can join my Facebook group, which is private, which is called Your Last First Date. So go into private Facebook groups and search for Your Last First Date, and you can apply to join and get some support for your dating and relationships. So join me now for episode 249, Online Dating After 50 with author Chuck Epstein. And before we get to Chuck, I just want to tell you a little bit more about him. He has written for over 50 publications. This is his fourth book, and it's called You Don't Think I'm Beautiful. It was published in October of 2016. He's won national awards. He was named the best small blog in 2009 by the Society of American Business Editors and Writers, and he holds an MA in Communications and a BA in Journalism. I hope this is you, Chuck, so let me see.
Yes.
Is that you? Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
How are you, Sandy? Thanks for the introduction.
Good. How are you?
Very good. Very good.
Good. Welcome to the show. I had a different phone number for you, so I just wanted to make sure that we were on
your
the same
instructions
page
were
here.
great. I enjoyed the introduction. I think there's a lot of overlap. what you said about being prepared, and dating post 50, you have to be very self-aware. You have to be self-exam. Have to do a good critical self-examination. You have to answer the basic question: are you ready to date? Because the dating scene post 50 years old is rough and tumble. It's pretty fast-paced, and people know what they want. People have been divorced or widowed, or they've been divorced for 2 decades, for example, or they've never been married, and they're very, very they're victims of their own habits, like we all are, and they have some very, very specific things that they're looking for, and they're very, very critical too. And I think in many cases, there's a one strike and you're out rule, which is unfortunate, but I think that's pretty common. Whether in terms of what's out, when people are meeting for the first time or so.
Yeah, so you just said a mouthful there, so I'm going to slow you down a little bit because a lot of ideas, and I want to dive a little deeper. So let's get to you and share with our audience. How did you know you were ready to date? So if you can fill everybody in a little bit on what happened to you in your life, and with your wife. And threw you into this dating pool at an age where you had no idea what you were doing. So if you can tell a little bit of your history, and then how you knew, I'm ready to get out there and go on online dating.
Well, I was married one time for 33 years, and my wife developed endometrial cancer, and she was sick for 6 years, and I was in cancer hospitals in 3 states, in Sacramento, California, at the University of California in Davis, and then we moved up to the Seattle Cancer Care Alliance, and then we moved to Florida to be with my oldest daughter and granddaughter at the time, and we went to Moffitt Hospital, which is a major cancer centers, and then we went to a hospital called Morton Plant in Clearwater, and she died shortly after being in Morton Plant for roughly about a month, after about 3 to 4 weeks after she was released. But she had endometrial cancer. They never used the word remission. She had terrible luck in all of her therapies and surgeries and experimental. So she was sick for 6 years, and I was with her the whole time. I don't think she ever went to a treatment without me. So when I was ready, after she died, I went to a bereavement group, and I was in Clearwater, Florida, and there was about 15 women in the group, and I was the only guy. And one day they went around the table, and everybody's telling their stories, and the moderator asked who in the group is ready to date, and I was the only person that raised my hand. And most of the women were burnt out. They had taken care of their husbands and gone through all that, and it was pretty tough. They had, but I realized right there that so a lot of the women had support groups. They had friends and family, and as a person who had just moved to Florida, I didn't have any of that. I was, as a matter of fact, the moderator of the group said I was like a perfect candidate for serious depression because I had been retired, I'd been widowed, I was unemployed. I was retired, so I wasn't unemployed. I had no friends and family in the area aside from my daughter, and I was in the process of thinking about moving as well. So all that meant that I just had to get out there and do something. So, I started going online, and I went online first with JDate and then Match.com later on, months later. But I started looking around as these different cities to move. I sold my house. I didn't want to be in the same house where my wife had died, so I did that, and I sold the house. And then I started going up and down the west coast of Florida. But I went to these different towns: Sarasota, Bradenton, Naples. And I went to these towns not as a home buyer, but as how would a single person survive in this town? And I made some decisions. I decided the West Coast wasn't for me. It just didn't offer the critical mass, the population. And then I decided to move to the East Coast. More Palm Beach, West Palm Beach, Boca Raton area, and I-95 offered just a lot more density in terms of single people. And then I started dating, and in the course of the dating, I was dating for a few. It's been a few years. It's been almost 3 years. My wife is gone, but I started dating about 2 years really, and I've just wasted thousands of dollars driving up and down I-95 in search of a companion. So that's this book is a little. This book is a memoir, and it's written. What makes it, I think, different, I'm told, is that it's written from a male's point of view. Most dating books are written from a woman's point of view. And number two, it's all about my mistakes. I don't have some of the dating experts I've seen online, they all, it's like, like making a cake. They say you do this and this and this, and you end up with this. And I didn't have that experience at all. This book is all about my mistakes and learning from those.
Yeah, so I actually love some of your mistakes, and one of them was your very first relationship. So if you can share that, like what you learned from that and what happened. Like actually the title of the book is based on that first relationship. So can you share a little bit?
Sure. The name of the book, You Don't Think I'm Beautiful, it wasn't really a relationship. It was one of my first dates, but the name of the book.
Oh, that was the dating disaster. Oh my God.
There was more than one. But the title of the book comes from a woman that I met online, who lived in a very, very nice country club in West Del Rey, Florida, and I went out with her and I met her at a bar for drinks. And when I saw her, I knew that she was 110 pounds, very thin, pale, and you could see in her eyes that she was under a lot of pressure. And she told me her story. She was in the middle of a divorce. Her husband was a doctor, and her daughter was a lawyer, and her son-in-law were lawyers. And she was in the middle of a very, very bitter settlement dispute over how much money to take for the divorce. And she was, in 10 words or less, she was really in the middle of a nervous breakdown. So she had no business going on a date to begin with, but I didn't know that. And I met her, and we were at this bar, and then she invited me back to her country club down the road to the bar there, and we sat at the bar at this really very nice country club, with granite that was about 4 inches thick, and anyway, she got up to get or to go to the hors d'oeuvre table or something, and I sat at the bar, and it wasn't crowded. The bar wasn't crowded at all. And then she walks back and comes up to me and looks at me in the eye and says, quote, "You don't think I'm beautiful." And at that time I knew that she was a nervous breakdown. So I just at that point I just got up and I gave her a kiss on the cheek, and I said, "I don't think you're beautiful now," and I left. But that's sort of one experience. But that's where the title of the book came from, because there's at number one, it's how do you answer that question? You don't think I'm beautiful? I just thought it was so sad and very odd, and it was indicative of some of the mental problems I think she was having. But when I first started dating, I felt like Rip Van Winkle, because as noted, I was married 33 years, and I had been sheltered. I was the guy that went to work with a briefcase, and my wife was healthy then and raised the kids, and she did have part-time jobs. She was a teacher and a real estate agent, and I just went to work, and I never met. We had friends who got divorced, for example, but I didn't get into the details too much. And when I was out in the dating scene, I met women who'd been divorced for 2 decades, women who would do anything for a meal, they'd do anything for a cruise, the women who were making, especially in South Florida here, you meet, women who made $30,000 a year that were living in $1 million condominiums, women who were dating their ex-husbands, women who were dating their ex-husbands that were married to somebody else, every possible human relationship permutation, that you could think of is down here. And you don't necessarily know all that, So it's more, if you take it could be anthropological in the sense that you're trying to, you get a glimpse into everybody's lives, people who had they were single mothers and they raised their kids for 25 years and had to go to court to get alimony from husbands who were millionaires. I mean, that's common too down here. I've talked to women who met on dates, and the guy sitting across from them, asks what time it is, and he says, it's almost 4:00, and he says, I have to go now. And she asks why, and he's wearing an ankle bracelet because he's out on, he's he's under house arrest for some sort of white collar felony. So you have that here too. So you have, and the stories I just mentioned, I'm sure there's a mirror image of that from a female perspective as well. But as noted, and everything I told was from a male perspective as well. So, yeah, and then I met some girl who it was her birthday, and I was going out with her for a few months, and her daughter gets involved and says she wants me to buy her mother my girlfriend at the time a present. So what was the present? It was she was very fixated on a $500 pair of Gucci sandals. And at the time, I didn't know her. I knew her, but I thought that was a little odd and a little expensive. I would never have bought my wife a $500 pair of Gucci sandals, or she would have bought them herself, which was no problem. But I don't know if I would have ever been involved in that discussion. But after a while, I went back and forth, and I eventually got her the shoes. And then her son-in-law told me that she was probably going to exchange it for cash anyway. So that's what's out here. That's what's out, and that's the dating world. 2015, 2016.
Yeah, there are crazy people everywhere. I mean, I think online dating, what it does is it exposes us to people that we would never meet in real life, which has its pluses and its minuses. And I think most of us live kind of a sheltered life. Like you said, you were working for many years, you were married, you didn't see that world until you jumped into it. And people are often shocked, that people like this exist, or that it starts to color how people see dating, that there are no good people. After a while, you start thinking everybody's crazy, or that there's not going to be a good person for you. So it's hard to stay optimistic in the process. So how did you stay optimistic after meeting, crazy people who would get drunk and try to take your money and whatever else happened? And then I want to get back to the relationship that you had, because I thought it was a great story. But how did you stay optimistic?
Well, it's difficult. It's not linear. I don't want to hold myself out as a paragon of rationality and optimism, because I wasn't. I was depressed. After I broke up with one of my girlfriends, I went to social workers, psychologists, psychiatrists. So I never did that in my life. When I was married, I never ever did that. But after when I broke up with a girl that I really did like, and it was due to to be fair, it was due to a mistake I made. But what she did is she cut me off of communication 100%, which is one of the cruelest things you can do. It's a silent treatment. I mean, West Point used to use, it's called shunning, or the silent treatment. And you remember Hester Prynne, they did that in some of the religious communities. The Puritans, for example, they would excommunicate you from the community, and you'd be part of the community, but no one would talk to you. Anyway, at West Point, they did the same thing to undergraduates, plebes who did certain things, and they didn't talk to them. But in 1970, someone took it to, I think, the Supreme Court, and they said it was a form of cruel and unusual punishment. So when my wife died, there was closure. She was sick. There was a funeral, a burial, and a mourning, and that's closure. And when I broke up with this girl, she just stopped talking to me literally overnight. She blocked me on Facebook and this and that, and she prevented me from calling her and writing her, and it was just, and I knew she was there, but I just felt terrible about what happened, and I just was basically apologizing to her. But that's really what that prompted, what the whole book was about. But that was a form of, that's a type of mental abuse, and it's usually used by passive aggressive people against others when they stop talking to you. There's no reason for adults to do that when there's no, there was no money involved, there was no malice involved, there was no, major story of stealing or abuse or deception or, something you'd see on one of the TV shows, Law and Order or something like that. It was just between two people, but she just did that, and I just thought that she was a divorced woman, and she's been divorced for a couple of decades, and I just think that's the way some people choose to make these breaks in their life so they can begin a new break, so there's no overlap. And that's her style, but it was certainly very painful to me. So as far as being optimistic, it's not. You can't. I don't think because when you're dating, you're emotionally involved just by virtue of the fact that you're going on a date. People have all these projections in mind, and we all have memories. There's studies that show we have 10 trillion memories about the past and the future, and our past memories and present memories, and any one of those memories can kick in when you meet somebody. So when you're on a date, you're always upbeat in the sense that you're optimistic, and sometimes you're too overly optimistic, and you start to project things too. And they've done numerous studies from different universities that show within the first fractions of a second you can make you make decisions about people, about whether they're trustworthy, honest, masculine, high status, intelligent, promiscuous, dominant, successful, adventurous. I mean, you make all these decisions. It's primordial. It goes back to when we were prehistoric, and two cavemen were walking down a path, and you had to decide within seconds whether this guy was going to hit you on the head with a stone or let you walk by. And we still do that today. So as far as being optimistic, I'm not. I think anyone who tells you that they're optimistic on 100% of the time when in the dating world, it's just I don't. Either they're not dating or they're doing something that I don't really know the formula for. It just doesn't work out that way. But you got to try.
But you would give up, right? And you would give up on dating if you didn't stay focused on the positive outcome you were looking for. So there is a degree of optimism that somehow you're going to meet that person.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah, there is optimism. However, I have met people who've given up. I have met people.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
Yes, I agree with you, and that's an observation. I've met people who gave up, and one of the things that I talked about in the book is that there's a finale especially for older people. I mean, there's two big things in the book which aren't normally discussed on the media. Number one is that there's an epidemic of loneliness, which a woman who was a PhD in psychology, who was in her late 60s, told me when I was doing the research. She said there was an epidemic of loneliness among her friends. Who are just they've given up. They go on dates, but they just don't have any success. And that's one thing, and that's never addressed. And that's also, I did more research, that's a universal phenomenon, too. That exists in the European countries and Asia. And people, especially among older people, and people who are dating, although sometimes they don't break it down in their different studies. And then there's just a very, very, something even more depressing, that there's we all recognize that, especially older people, that our life on Earth is limited, our time on Earth is limited, and there's a very, very sad awareness that people are afraid of dying alone, and that's out there. That's a terrible thought. It's not widely discussed, but it's a common source of depression. There's a lot of depression among older people, but the thought of dying alone without a loved one. People will have family and friends, and spouses and sons. No, it's not sons and daughters, for example. But and without having a loved one, that is a factor out there, and that's especially today. So, because I've been writing about retirement and since the 70s, and there's people retirement presents its own significant problems, especially in terms of loneliness and losing your job, and also in terms of the financial aspect. There's a financial aspect of dating as well, which is very, very evident down here too. So those are some of the things that have to, and that all has to be factored into the equation. It's not all happy. It's not all happy hours and happy talk. You know what I mean? Those days, I think that's one of the Hollywood fantasies. It's especially when you get people are out there looking for each other, and they're looking for something, but you build in a lot of unrealistic projections out there.
Yeah, I hear that, and I hear a lot about the loneliness. I think that a lot of people fear that they are going to die alone, but then there are people who really make a life for themselves. So without having to depend on a significant other, they start building out a life that's meaningful and fulfilling no matter how old they are. So I'm sure you write about that in your retirement writing, correct?
Yeah, I mean, people do have, retirement is very difficult, especially, I think it's harder for men than women, although it's probably more so now because a lot of people have to, a lot of people try to find a life after retirement because they need it often for income purposes. But a lot of their own personal identity is tied into their work. So when people pack up their they retire on a Friday and then Monday comes around, the phone doesn't ring anymore. And despite all the going away parties and the handshakes and the hugs and everything, the reality is that people don't. When you're on your own, the phone doesn't ring, and all the status that accrued to you when you had your job and your business cards on Friday after you retire, on Monday they're useless. So that's a very, very difficult thing to do. So you have to be a whole person while you're retiring. While you're working, and that's difficult for younger people too. But you have to build something, but it's often very, very unrelated to what you were doing, especially when you factor in the financial aspect, and number two, that we're the longevity. We're living longer, and there's the quality of life as well, which is often not discussed. But all this is, these are like concentric circles with dating, retirement, personal identity, mental health, and this society doesn't do that, especially with the current political scene about cutting back certain financial safety nets or things that will increase your disposable income in retirement. But these are all parts of dating. It's just in terms of what you have to factor into the situation.
Yep, true. So let me ask you, you talk about dating being a self-discovery process, and I just am curious as to what are the key things that you learned about yourself through the last couple of years of dating?
Well, you got to do a lot of self-examination and critical self-examination, and you have to, what's important in your life, and you realize how, especially for men, I'm only speaking from my experience, but the same hormones that happen when you meet a girl, when you date a girl, when you start to like the girl, when you maybe break up with the girl, those are the exact same raging hormones that you had when you were 16 years old. And things may change. You might wear different clothes or whatever, but the self-reflection brings you back to when you're first dating, and it's you have to be aware of that, and you realize that the more it changes, the more it's the same. So one of the things is you have to, when you start dating, you have to be confident and self-aware. So that when you go into the dating scene and you have bad experiences, which is a possibility, you have to be confident enough that your self-esteem, your psyche, your morale, and your pocketbook are going to merge intact. And if you're starting to date after a divorce or the death of a spouse or a breakup, you have to bracket those painful experiences and start fresh. And that's easier said than done. But if you go on a date, you have to give the other person your undivided attention, and you have to do it in a natural, friendly, individualized, and attractive way. No date wants to hear about your baggage from their past lives or their past relationships, or the bad divorce, and because you're going on a date, and you shouldn't assume that your new date is a psychiatric social worker. It's not her job to provide a therapy session. That's the biggest turnoff. So that's definitely not. If that's what your version of, if you feel that way, cancel the date. Period. I mean, until you throw some cold water on your face. But that is not dating. Dating, the woman that you're dating doesn't deserve that. She deserves a fresh start. And one of the things that's really a turn on is that you should really talk about where you want to on a date. You should talk about where you are now, what you're currently doing, and most importantly, where you want to be in the future. Because everyone's got a past. They have good experiences, bad family experiences, good family experiences. But what's good to do is what you want to do in the future. Because human beings are hardwired to be optimistic, like you've alluded to that, and they're hardwired to be optimistic and forward looking. We're one of the few animals that looks into the future. That looks talk about what you want to do. If you're taking a class, for example, I'm taking a welding class to make a table, and I'm paying more in tuition to do the welding class than I could if I wanted to go out to a nice furniture store and buy a table. But God knows I'm going to, you know what I mean? So it's one of these stupid things you do when you retire. But it's a class, and then in the class you might be able to meet people, and I couldn't meet people in the furniture store. So that's something too. And in the book, I also talk about there's a whole chapter in the book about it's very important to choose the right physical location for your residence too, because long distance dating does not work. You can't date someone 2 hours away. You can't date someone on the other side of the states. You can't hop on an airplane on weekends. That's unless you're just doing it for fun. And that doesn't work. So I'm not a person who lives in high rises, but high rises have benefits because you can meet a lot of people in the right high rise, and that's a major consideration because proximity is a key determinant in how you meet people and where you're going to be, especially because if you're in the same socioeconomic class as well, that's a big deal too.
Yeah. So. Yeah, a lot of really good points, Chuck. And I think that that the long distance thing is difficult, but some people do it, and many people do succeed. Not everybody can pick up and move. They have restrictions with children, with economics, with whatever. But I think you have to really consider all these things. And I think that the most important thing is your attitude and get out there and learn from your experiences. Don't share your past. Really, it's who you are now, and it's who you want to be in the future. Share your dreams, share your goals. I mean, that's such important points. So tell everybody how they can find your book, how they can find you as we wrap up here.
Wonderful. The book is You Don't Think I'm Beautiful. It's available on Amazon and Kindle. And I have a Facebook page, too, You Don't Think I'm Beautiful. And I try to post some more pertinent information there. There's always new studies coming out about relationships and science and psychology. And I've been interviewed on TV in Tampa and things like that, and your show, obviously. But marketing the book is harder than writing the book, and I think you get down when you're a little depressed, but then you turn on the TV set and I see Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton and George Bush hawking their books on CNN, so I don't feel so bad. So it's just the nature of the business, So it's the way it is, and I think even Mark Twain had to hawk his own book, or Ulysses S. Grant had to hawk his own book. So anyway, that's the nature of the business. But the answer to your question is available on Kindle and Amazon, and if anybody wants to buy the movie rights, get in touch with me. What can I say?
Well, thank you so much,
But I really appreciate
Chuck.
the opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you,
it was
Sandy.
a delight, and
it's
a good
show.
read. I suggest that people read it. There's a lot of great adventures and great stories in here. So, yes, best of luck with your book sales and with your dating adventures. And thank you, everybody, for listening today, and I hope you go on your last first date very soon. Have a
Thank you,
wonderful
Sandy.
day. Thank you.